The other greenhouse gas, as well as greenhouse gas and other emissions, include nitrogen oxides, volatile organic compounds, sulfur compounds, or whatnot. Again, by choosing the dirtiest sources, coal and oil, you're going to have higher emissions than if you compare this to either the average for the grid or combined cycle natural gas. So again, it appears to me that the reductions have been grossly overstated, and they're not there. They're actually going to be higher if you compare them to the other base.
And the Bloom application, they indicate there are no hazardous components associated with their technology. Are there any safety issues or other issues that we need to be concerned about with Bloom's installation in the coastal zone?
I object to the question. It's not. Those words aren't in the application.
I'll rephrase. Will this proposed project result in the generation of any hazardous waste as defined by the Delaware regulations governing hazardous waste? Response, no.
And that wasn't the question.
I'll rephrase the question.
Thank you.
Will this project result in the generation of any hazardous waste as defined by the Delaware regulations regarding hazardous waste?
The accurate answer is we don't know. Bloom has, in some of their information provided in their California installation, they have provided some specialized training for workers involved with these fuel cells for dealing with hydrogen sulfide. Fuel cells are poisoned, or the activity of them is basically eliminated if they're exposed to hydrogen sulfide or some other sulfur compounds. So according to that, Bloom is apparently putting in systems to remove sulfur and hydrogen sulfide. And hydrogen sulfide is a poisonous, toxic chemical that you can go to the Cameo chemical database and get the properties of it. It's reported that concentrations can lead to permanent disability or even death. The other problem with hydrogen sulfide is the fact that it smells horrible when you first smell it. It's like rotten eggs, but it also numbs the senses of odor detection. So after you're in it a short time, you don't know you're there, and you don't have that warning to leave the area. So my concern is that I don't know whether Bloom has an issue with that. I don't know how much they would have on site because it's not provided in the application. But H2S is obviously a hazardous chemical, and it is part of the process at some point in there. So it's not dealt with in how they will be removing this, how much they may have on site at any one time.
The report goes on to project the scope of the work that will be done with the desired funding, and information submitted in connection with that report is relevant to these proceedings, and it speaks to question 6.22. And the question again, will this proposed project result in generation of hazardous waste as defined by the Delaware regulations governing hazardous waste? Response is no. I'm asking Mr. Timmons to comment on his findings and his review of that report.
I have to object. Mr. Timmons, it's the question I guess I should have asked in voir dire, and I don't know if the board will allow me to ask that question, but my objection is that Mr. Timmons may or may not be familiar with the definition of hazardous waste as defined by the Delaware regulations governing hazardous waste. If that's the case, then I don't think he can testify that anything at the Bloom facility is or is not hazardous waste.
May I address that?
First of all, before we get to your objection, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Nichols has moved that the board accept into evidence this document. What I hear from you, Mr. Phillips, is an objection to his testimony. Do you have any objection to the document being moved into evidence?
Yes. One, it's hearsay. Two, it's irrelevant because it deals with some sort of training in the state of California. There's no training going on here. This is going to be a generating facility. I can't see how this document necessarily applies.
Michelle, do you have any objection to the document being moved into evidence?
I'm aware of the document. We're going to have a witness to speak to the document. So I don't have a problem with it being admitted. I do have a problem, and I'm joining Mr. Phillips' objection, with having this witness testify about it, and maybe...
Let's deal with that when we get to his testimony. Mr. Nichols, do you have any further argument with respect to your offer of this document into evidence?
Sure. The training that that is being proposed for the Bloom project is actually retraining. And the retraining will apply to employees who are not only at the facilities but also at customer sites. Since the customer site training is part of the employment retraining proposal, it's relevant to these hearings because we will be citing, if this board chooses to uphold NREC's decision, citing solid oxide fuel cells in Delaware that will be trained by personnel from Bloom under this proposal, and this proposal explains what they're going to be retrained for. And that topic will be applicable here in Delaware because it's in site, not just at the customer.
So we have the objection is sustained unanimously.
The objection, so the objection is
It will not be entered into.
will not be introduced. Are there hazardous waste within that fuel cell, based upon your understanding and review of data information?
Same objection. The question is without a foundation. There's no evidence to the effect that Mr. Timmons knows what the definition of hazardous waste is under the Delaware Code, or the administrative code.
Mr. Timmons, do you have an understanding of what the Delaware regulations governing hazardous waste is, based on your industry experience?
Yes, as I noted, I spent a number of years at the facility in Delaware City. I was a technical manager. Besides process safety and engineering, one of my responsibilities was environmental management. I am intimately familiar with the DNREC regulations. I have met with DNREC people and worked with them over the many years. I was on the technical advisory committee for developing some regulations. The hazardous waste regulations apply to our plant as far as the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act and the Delaware Solid Hazardous Waste Act. So,
What proposed product result in generation of any hazardous waste is defined by the Delaware regulations governing hazardous waste?
they note that there are sulfur compounds in this that are to be removed. However, it doesn't state in what form. With this other document, and that you haven't allowed, but it does indicate hydrogen sulfide training. Hydrogen sulfide is a toxic chemical. It is an air pollutant. It has a reportable quantity of 100 pounds.
I'm going to object. I mean, Mr. Phillips made an objection about the document. I don't know that the witness can then just sort of say what he thinks is in the document or what he thinks is in the process. That's improper.
Has Mr. Timmons, have you, Mr. Timmons, read any industry material regarding the chemicals produced through the operation of solid oxide fuel cells?
Again, from the literature, sulfur compounds poison fuel cells. Hydrogen sulfide is one of them. That is going to be removed. It is for any standard solid oxide fuel cell operation. It is removed. I do not know in what form or what process, because it was not stated in any of the application here. However, it has to be removed for the integrity of the fuel cell. So there is some sulfur compound that's being removed, and in what form it is, whether it's in its pure form, whether it's adsorbed to carbon or whatnot, I don't know. According to the Cameo chemical database, they are toxic as poison, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, and they can produce permanent injury up to including death with inhalation of that.